Where do you find God? Almost sounds like a loaded question, doesn't it? I mean, if God was someone you could find, wouldn't everyone be out searching? Well, rather than looking for something elusive, like a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, I reckon it's more about learning to recognise the way God is already present to us in our everyday lives. I'm Lizzie Oakes, and this is Where Do You Find God? My guest today is Craig Gemmell. Craig is a counsellor, and he's been doing this for a number of years. Welcome, Craig.
Hello.
I was just thinking, you worked in, was it printing and stuff for quite a number of years and did the transition to counselling a number of years ago. I mean, you just seem to fit in that space like a hand in glove as a counsellor. What is it that you love about your vocation?
Yes, love the question. It was the answer to that, it was a long time in the making, but 30 years in the print industry, then got to a place in life where things needed to change, and they did. Didn't know what to do next, but this involvement with people over many years, I kept circling back to counselling, and as wondering, what can I do for the second phase of life, the second stage of life that had some meaning and I really connected with. And so I went back to training and got a degree in counselling. And the real funny thing about God and the way that I feel God's working, my involvement with people prior to me going to counselling and getting counselling is that I was really good. I think I was really good at asking questions of people, asking about them, which I thought, was a skill, and until I learned that it was a great defence.
Oh.
And as long as I kept people kind of like asking them about them, no one would ask me about me. I'm not saying no one, but it felt a lot more less anxious if I just kept asking people about them. And why I say it's interesting is because God used that very same skill, but turned it around and made it a career, a vocation, sitting with the same people, but I'm not asking questions about people and of people about hoping that we don't talk about me. Counsellors very rarely talk about themselves anyway, but I'm actually really interested in people.
Love that. Craig, in Acts chapter 17, verse 27, it says, God intended that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. So my question for you today, Craig, is where do you find God?
I find him in a lot more accessible places than I did maybe 10, 20 years ago. A very long story short, I don't know if you've ever felt you've come into a gathering of people and like you're the last one that's turned up and you feel like there's a room full of conversations that are happening and you scramble and are scrambling to try and find how you fit. Understand what's going on around you. And it's a kind of a very rough description of how I felt meeting God and coming into church and spirituality. It felt like it was everybody else knew what was happening. Everybody else knew the rules and knew about relationship with God. And I was scrambling to find out, who is this God? A lot of it was about performance and a lot of it was about just doing the right thing until life didn't turn out the way that I'd hoped and had a bit of a crisis. And it was a place where I was so alone, so lonely, but surrounded by people. And I remember what began to feel real was I hugged a tree. And in hugging that tree, I felt more connected to God than I had probably in the previous kind of, like I said, 10, 20 years. And so today I find and meet God certainly in nature, walking my lovely dog in the mornings, and just slowing down life enough to notice creativity. And I certainly feel God is very present in working with people, but there are some people that I find the experience of God kind of more tangible. I used to feel like I had to achieve a relationship with God, and I think kind of the Jewish community, that's kind of really confusing because we are always have been with God. So it's not about achieving, it's understanding what it's like to sit down and imagine God sitting next to you on a park bench in your good days and your bad days, when you're crying, when you're laughing. It's a spirit for me. It's a felt sense. And something I've always said is I don't know something until I feel it.
That sense of, I like what you're saying. You talk to him about the good stuff, the bad stuff. You're sitting on a park bench. It's a felt sense. And is that the sense of God that you didn't kind of know decades ago, even though he was there? And so that's something that's developed for you, that sense and that felt sense of his presence, Craig?
Yes, and trusting that. Had some really fantastic spiritual direction over the years who I've said they've helped me sit with my weird and wacky ideas about God and spirituality. They've made space enough for me to appreciate what has always been within me, but brought about a certain level of intuition and confidence in trusting that inner voice, that inner sense of self in certain places and situations, and taking a back seat of listening to control that I felt that I needed to have. And so when you take a back seat and you realize that you're not in control of anything, life seems a little bit easier.
Amen to that. So this God that you find in nature, and you have developed this felt sense of his presence, what's he like, Craig?
Yeah, he's way more reliable than I am. He's much more trustworthy than I am. And it confounds me of how many times I feel I get things wrong or make mistakes or don't hear that he's never left. And, that's been the exchange, I think, in the difference in the human experience is it seems more conditional, but with God, God has always been. And whether we understand it, like it or not, God walks with us every day, all day.
Tell me more about, you just said, I don't hear that he's never left. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's kind of again, dipping my toes into part of my story. I expected people to leave. Relationships are good while they're good, but I have this anticipation people leave. What my strategy for life has been, I will leave first. So to accept and appreciate God hasn't left, has never left, no matter what I've done, who I am, has really taken some work and trust, because my human experience tells me something different. It's not something that is, I can say, I always feel 24/7. It's just something that I know, and I don't have to explain it to anybody. It works for me. I just hope people find it within themselves that this God part can come alive. No matter what's happened, what you've done, where you've been, that thing is always constant.
Craig, thanks for joining us today on Where Do You Find God? If you'd like to listen again, tune into Star each Wednesday morning at 10:30. or listen and subscribe via your favourite podcast app and give us a review so others can find us.